This is John Beethan with What Has My Attention. And this is episode 1 with John Victorino, and it's titled Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and SEO Digital Real Estate. Now, this podcast is about what does have my attention in podcasting, music, critical thinking, and emotional intelligence. And I'll be reviewing other podcasts and recommending you actually listen to them, and some defining moments in my lives and other people's lives, and share golden-tongued wisdom as well. And I'll also occasionally have a guest on the show. So we're in the middle of a pandemic on this date, April 12, 2020. I'm recommending you go to the podcast Making Sense with Sam Harris and listen to episode 196, which is titled The Science of Happiness, which is an interview with Laurie Santos, who is an associate professor in the Department of Psychology at Yale. And they're talking about beating isolation loneliness. It's a real thing. Originally recorded October 10, 2019, before the pandemic, John Victorino was the inspiration to start my own podcast after producing for others for about the last 15 years. And I apologize to John Victorino for taking so long to get the podcast in this episode up. The pandemic has allowed me to get this show up because I now have a bit more time and fewer distractions. And as I've said before, for anyone that's been putting off starting your podcast, now is absolutely a great time to start and build your community and express your brand and get your message out there in a much larger way. And I can help, and all you have to do is reach out. So right now, I bring you John Victorino.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing well this morning.
That's good. Good. So, I wanted to bring you in the studio because we met at the Carlsbad Chamber of Commerce, and your company is Beacon SEO, right?
Yes, it is. Yep.
Okay. And so you want to describe a little bit about what you do with your business?
Yes. So really the point of our business is we work with business owners and we help them get in front of their ideal clients. Mm-hmm. That's really just the best way to explain it.
Yeah.
Without getting too technical,
Yeah, without getting too technical. So we're talking about an online business, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. On-page SEO and stuff like that.
Yep. Making you show up in front of Google.
Yeah, exactly. So part of the reason you're here is because although I've produced podcasts for 14 years, you were partially inspired me to do what I've been talking about doing for a long time, which is start my own podcast. So, and the biggest reason is that when we met for coffee, actually when I first met you at the chamber, but it was very evident coffee that sitting in front of you established and locked on eye contact, which in a very non-threatening way and just kind of a gentle way. And that spoke volumes to me. And then when we got into the conversation more and more, it was just obviously there was something going on in your life that had probably informed you and made a difference. I mean, you said you were from Nevada, right?
Yeah, I'm from Reno, Nevada. And I mean, on the whole thing with the eye contact, I mean, for those of you that can't see me in the podcast, I'm 27. I'm part of the millennial generation, I would say.
Yeah.
That's something that I always run into with even my friends. Sometimes if I look them in the eyes for too long, they get just unnerved. So, I think eye contact is a really good thing for communication.
Yeah. There are some cultures that don't do that. Like I think in Japanese culture, mm-hmm. it's somewhat, you kind of bow down and, sort of like that.
Good thing we're not in Japan.
Yeah. Yeah. So, So the conversation went to Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that has just consumed my life as of late. Mm-hmm. And so I find myself relating a lot of the things that happen in my life to Jiu-Jitsu. Mm-hmm. There's really a lot of similarities that you can run into with that.
Yeah. Well, it sort of piqued my interest because I told you a story that when I was living in Santa Fe, New Mexico, I was working for a company and the owner of the company asked me to hire somebody to do, to just be there all the time to do some IT work. And I hired this guy, Gil. And Gil and I got to know each other. And then I found out he did Jiu-Jitsu. And he was taught by his father starting at the age of 3. And although I never saw him perform, so to speak, or anything else. But one day he just said to me, he said, if I can get you on the ground, it's over. And I go, what do you mean by that? So why don't you tell us what jiu-jitsu is and how, as a martial art, it is very different than anything else, isn't it?
Yeah, so jiu-jitsu is really mainly a grappling sport, although there are different variations where there's striking involved. And of course, if you get into MMA, like the UFC, you have a lot of striking that's involved. Mm-hmm. But as a self-defense art, it's really good just because if you're a smaller person, right, and you have a bigger opponent, once you get them on the ground, there's a lot of things that start to work in your favor.
Because you're smaller?
Not necessarily, but the fact that they're on the ground means that they can't quickly accelerate their body to create a lot of force. It's just the best way to describe it. Because if their back's on the floor, they can't, lunge forward to create that momentum to strike you in the face and do a lot of damage. Now, if they're able to strike you while they're on the ground, it's mostly just going to be their arm strength. And that's a lot less powerful than if my whole body weight is into a punch.
Or a kick or something.
Yeah, or something like that. Yep.
Uh-huh.
And so that's a really big benefit that you can experience if you are a smaller fighter and you find yourself in an altercation where the guy's a lot bigger than you. And on top of that, there's certain vulnerabilities that the human anatomy has. And as you study that through jiu-jitsu, you start to realize that it doesn't really matter how strong you are, how big your arms are. I can still, wrap my arm around your neck and cut off your oxygen supply and put you to sleep. That doesn't change. Mm-hmm. So those are just some things that you start to realize. And there's several just laws that just work. And it's just the way that we're designed as humans that we can always exploit.
Mm-hmm. So learning jiu-jitsu, how has that kind of changed or informed your life in terms of the way it must be in terms of an approach to life or people or something?
It really humbles you, It's much like learning anything else, it's difficult. There's a lot of not necessarily fear, but like apprehension, like, oh man, am I going to make a fool of myself, whatever. But really, it just humbles you. I remember I think it was my first week doing the jiu-jitsu classes. And, we go through our typical training session. So the first part of our training session is usually drilling specific techniques. And then at the end of the training, you go into some live sparring. So during the end of the training session where we're doing sparring, I actually partnered up with this, he must have been like 70 years old. I mean, he's just like, white haired, scrawny looking. Like I must have had like 30 pounds on him. And he was a blue belt. I was a white belt. And he just got his hands on me, put me on my back. And then after that, I just pretty much couldn't move. And so I just started kind of freaking out. Like, what is going on? Why is he able to do that? And it's really all about technique. So after that, it really just has become my obsession.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
You and I, when we talked before, one thing you had mentioned about something about it, if you have an opponent in front of you, let's just say you're on the street and there's somebody threatening you with a knife or a gun or anything. You had talked a little bit about how much time you actually have.
Yeah, so if you're trying to defend yourself, if somebody has a knife, your best chance is probably to run. Mm-hmm. Hopefully you're faster than them, but if you have to. So with a gun, right, now the timing varies. It depends on if the gun is holstered, if, it's already cocked, the safety's on and things like that. But this stat actually came from my father-in-law, who is, retired San Diego PD. Now he is a sheriff. And he's told me that if the gun is in a holster and the time that it takes to take it out of the holster, point it at somebody, cock the gun and then take the safety off, you have about 3 seconds. And typically that's 21 feet for a regular person. So if you're within 21 feet and that gun is still holstered, you can try and go for it and, control his arms and stop him from pulling out that gun. But yeah, if you're within that 21 feet and you have a knife and he has a gun, I would go for it.
Yeah.
Although when your adrenaline is rushing through your body, you might be able to move very quickly. So,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, where are you at in terms of your just studying jiu-jitsu? I mean, how often do you go?
Depending on how busy I get, it typically ranges from 3 to 5 or 6 times a week. But right now I am at the very beginning stage. I'm a white belt still. I have 4 stripes. I'm actually, I'll be testing for my blue belt here in December, 2 months away. I have this like 3-page sheet with 3 columns on each page that has all these different moves, all these techniques that you need to know how to do. And that's what they test you on. But as far as my journey in jiu-jitsu, I am very, very at the beginning stage of everything. Oh, you know what's great though that I've started to notice, right? When I started a year and a half ago, when I would spar with somebody, it would be like, I don't know, it'd be like watching somebody drown. They're just like throwing their arms around, kicking their legs, and they're just trying not to drown, right? But now it's to the point where my mind is calmer and I'm seeing moves more calmly. Like the way that my coach was talking about it was he had me in a choke and he was looking in my eyes and he could see that I wasn't panicking. It was like, okay, here are the moves that I need to do to get out of this, and I performed them. And now it's to the point where as I'm sparring with somebody else, I'm actually able to see the openings. Now the next step is going to be to recognize those openings more quickly and then take advantage of them. But it just, it comes with time and repetition.
Yeah. What I say is repetition is the mother of skill.
Yep.
So a lot of people try to get into something and they want to typically some people take a yoga class and they take yoga for 6 months and then they open up a little practice of teaching yoga. And it's like John and I are kind of grimacing because it's just like, no, I don't think so. And it's like, there's just, it just takes time.
Yeah. I mean, being a practitioner of yoga and running a business are 2 different things. Not a lot of people realize that when they get into their businesses, but a great example is with attorneys. They go to law school for 3 years. My buddy's in law school right now, and I told him when he started, like, dude, I'll see you in 3 years.
Yeah.
He's at the library. He's at school from 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. every day, other than Sunday, I believe. But when you're going through law school, you learn how to be an attorney. You learn, how to read the law, how to interpret language. But when you're out there and you start your own practice, your own firm, like, you don't know how to run a business. You don't know how to do marketing, how to systemize your operations, but those are things that are essential to running a business. And that's pretty much the same for a lot of different people that are good at something. They open a business doing that.
Interesting. So what's a little bit of the history of jiu-jitsu? Where did it start?
So just as a disclaimer, I got this history from YouTube, so you can probably go find the history of jiu-jitsu through YouTube, and it'll be more accurate than what I'm about to tell you. But from what I gather, there were these Japanese jiu-jitsu practitioners that visited Brazil, and the Gracie family got to attend those classes. And one of the smallest of the Gracie brothers at the time, his name is Helio Gracie. He's the smallest, the weakest of all the brothers, and he wanted to develop a style of jiu-jitsu that suits his style, which is technique-driven, timing-driven, and make it work that way and make it work against stronger, bigger opponents. And that was really the genesis of Jiu-Jitsu, from my understanding. And to this day, for every, so I'm part of the Gracie Academies. And to this day, every time we start a class, we bow to Master Helio. He is hung up on the wall in every gym, as far as I can tell.
Interesting. So, yeah, I'm just kind of curious, how long does it take to get through all the belts, and what are the belts?
Yeah, so the average that I've gotten is about 10 years to get your black belt. And depending on if you're an adult or a kid, the belts are different. I'm not sure what the belts are for the kids, but for an adult, you start with a white belt, you go up to blue, then purple, and then brown, and then you get to a black belt. And then above that, I believe, is a coral belt. And that's, 30 years, I believe, to get that. And the thing that I've heard from other black belts is that once you get to the black belt level, it almost starts over, because you start to realize just how much you really don't know, even that you're 10 years in. So, we'll see. We'll see how long it takes me. I'm a year and a half in.
Yeah, that's actually true with a lot of things. For me, the longer I'm on the planet, the more I realize I just don't know. Like I'll learn something new and think, why didn't I know that before? And it's usually because of some sort of experience with somebody or something,
Yeah, it's really good to know those limitations in yourself. Yeah. And accepting it. There's nothing more dangerous than a person who thinks they know everything.
Yeah. I can think of several. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it just limits your growth, your potential. Like, if you're not even open to asking a question, if you're not open to asking a question of, oh, how can I do this? Or how is this done? Versus, oh, I already know how to do that. Let's not worry about it. Very dangerous thinking.
So taking a side journey here, I understand you and yours just got back from a vacation, right?
We did, yeah. We were in Mexico and Cabo San Lucas for a week. Very fun.
Nice.
Yeah, there was a hurricane headed in as we were leaving.
Oh, really?
And we didn't know if we were going to get back here, if our flights were going to get canceled or anything like. Actually, somebody in our party had their flight canceled, but we made it out. How
long were you there? A week?
Yep, a week, 7 days.
And of course, any practicing jiu-jitsu while you were there?
No. No. It was a lot of relaxing, a lot of eating food, drinking. But honestly, after a few days of lounging around, I couldn't take it. But definitely headed back into the jiu-jitsu gym. It was interesting during our warm-ups. I thought to myself, man, I still know how to do this. It's pretty cool. It's like riding a bike.
It's like riding a bike. You never forget. Yeah.
Yeah. Although the cardio and conditioning was not very good that day after we got back.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely breathing hard very quickly.
You want to talk a little bit about Beacon?
Sure.
Yeah,
so,
because like I said, when we started meeting for coffee and stuff, before jiu-jitsu came up, it was like, I recognized you'd been working really hard at this for a while and you know what you're doing. So let's talk about it. SEO. A lot of times I'll talk to somebody, client or something, and they'll always ask what it is, which is search engine optimization. And we all know it's really important. I mean, it's one thing to have a website or some sort of property, whether it's social media or whatever, but if people can't find you, because most people are just going to search, then it can be a problem if it's not properly done.
The comparison that I like to draw with, a website that has proper SEO that gets organic traffic is that if you were to open, let's say, a yogurt shop, right? And you can set that yogurt shop up anywhere you want, and it lands in the middle of a deserted island where there's no people walking about, your yogurt shop is going to fail, right? You need traffic to a business for it to succeed. Now, if you take that same yogurt shop, put it in the middle of Times Square, there's a lot of people walking through. You have a high chance of succeeding. And that's really all it is SEO is all about putting your business and, your website, your properties in the most traffic place on the internet. That's really all it is. And it's like real estate, right? It's all about location, location, location. I've even thought of myself as a digital property owner, because that's really all it is we get businesses in those highly trafficked areas where they can now generate more business.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And there's some caveats to this too, because in our other conversation we were just talking about, there are some businesses that make it very difficult for local search, right?
Yeah, there are certain industries that there are just some huge authority websites that makes it just pretty much impossible to rank for. So an example of this would be real estate. Mm-hmm. In the realm of real estate, you have to be really careful with your strategy. So in real estate, there are still keywords that you can rank for that is doable, that can generate business, but a lot of them, you don't even want to bother. So for example, if you search on Google, Carlsbad real estate or Carlsbad homes for sale, you will find at the top of the first page, it'll be, Zillow, Trulia, House.com, Homes.com, Realtor.com, those websites, Century 21, Redfin, for a typical real estate team that's local, it's going to be very, very, very difficult for you to outrank those guys just because they have millions, maybe even billions of pages that are all related to real estate. And Google is, it's a data processor, and they know that this website has billions of pages around real estate. Let's rank them for real estate keywords. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the industries that's just really difficult to rank for. Another one would be pharmaceuticals. That's difficult in a different sense just because there's a lot of sketchy practices that happen when it comes to pharmaceuticals.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then on the other side, what might be considered something a little easier to rank for?
If you're a local service provider, those are very, very lucrative for businesses.
Okay, so you're talking plumbers and electricians and pool and spa?
Yep. Plumbers, electricians, nail salons are really good too, hair salons, chiropractors, dentists, although with chiropractors and dentists, a lot more of those practitioners are investing in their SEO, so it's becoming more and more competitive. Mm-hmm. Attorneys, you can also do it, but it's also pretty competitive. But really, if it's localized, you have a really good chance of ranking for those keywords. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, once you start branching out into like trying to rank for the entire country, then, depending on the niche, the space, the keywords, it can be doable. It might not be. But if it's on a city by city basis, there's pretty much, anyone can do that.
Yeah. So if you're an attorney and you specialize in one certain part of it, like, let's say you're an attorney and you specialize in helping startups get started right on the right foot by having the proper legal documents to get started. Would that be a little bit easier, you would think?
So that would depend on the city. And mm-hmm. then the other thing we got to consider in that case is, are you in a city that has a lot of startups that are starting up? Those are just things that you would need to consider. So if you're in a city where there's not a lot of startups that are going, there's not a lot of attorneys that are doing what you do for startups, it's probably going to be very easy because there's not going to be a lot of competition. But if you are, let's say, in San Francisco, where there's just pretty much everywhere, it'd be more competitive for sure. More competitive. Yep.
So would you recommend to clients to actually consider doing other things to, make connections, like networking, like?
Yeah. I would think about where your clients hang out. and go find those places and see if you can network in those places. So for example, with that startup attorney, I would go find incubators and co-working spaces. I actually recently ran into this place. I forget what it's called, but it's a place where you can learn how to weld, learn how to run a CNC machine, learn how to create products. And I think it's called a maker space. Mm-hmm. I would bet there's a lot of people trying to come up with products in that space that are going to be startups at some point. I would even go to universities. Mm-hmm. You know, usually universities have in their school of business a business planning senior project kind of deal. When I was going through school, I was part of an engineering program, and our senior project is to come up with a product and then come up with a business plan for it. So those are really great sources if you are that type of attorney.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Awesome. What other part about everything you do that you're really passionate about and really unique? And do you have a story about maybe a client that did real well?
Yeah. So one of the so this was back when I was still living in Reno. I met this chiropractor. He was maybe early 30s. I'm not quite sure how old he was. He's in the middle of kind of buying out the previous owner of the practice, who was, I think, in his 60s. So it's, time to change the guard. And when we met, he was really interested about, doing SEO. And one of the conversations that we had is, if my car ever broke down, like, I'm looking on Google for a mechanic. So I'm guessing that if somebody hurts their back, that's what they're going to do as well. So we started working with this attorney or this chiropractor, and a few months in is cool. So I got a phone call from him randomly, and he said, John, we just signed 10 new patients this week, and we've never done that before. So we think it's definitely working. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think the figure from them was they typically average around 2 to 3 new patients per week. So, 3 times it.
And you, of course, could go look at analytics to see what was going on.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah. And then another one, actually, this is fairly recent. We're working with a landscaper in the Lake Tahoe area. For those of you who've never been to Lake Tahoe, beautiful, beautiful place. Go check it out. He actually signed a $100,000 job for his landscaping company, and we were only doing SEO for him. So it can be very, very beneficial for business owners.
Uh-huh. So typically, if you have a client that's got a website or something that comes to you, so what do you typically do? I mean, where do you start with them?
So the first thing that we start off with is going through a complete analysis of their website, their situation. And the way that I describe it is, if you were going to a doctor, right, you've got some pain in your body, you go to a doctor, the first thing that they're going to have you do is fill out some paperwork, run some tests, and then based off of those tests, you can create a game plan on how to make you better, treatment, medication, whatever you got to do. Mm-hmm. Right. And we take that same approach with our websites as well. So when we have a business owner that is interested in doing SEO, the first thing that we do is we take a look at their website, right? What are the on-page factors that we need to work on? Is the website fast? Do they have the right keywords in the right places on their website? Is there anything that we got to clean up as far as content is concerned? Is it secure? Things like that all need to be, we just need to take stock of what's going on in that situation. And then the next step is to figure out who their competitors are, right? Because, Google is a fight, right? That number one ranking website isn't going to give up their spot for you. You got to take it. So we got to figure out, okay, how powerful is that website? How well optimized are they? What are the resources that it's going to take to get you above them, get you in the race? And then the last thing that we also go through is what's called keyword research. And all that is all about finding out what is the potential business you can generate by ranking on the first page of Google. Like, if nobody is looking for what you do, honestly, don't do SEO, right? So I actually ran into this. I've never met the lady, but I heard there is a lady somewhere here in Carlsbad that what she does is she is a cat therapist. And I would venture to guess that nobody really looks for a cat therapist on Google, although you never know. Mm-hmm. You think they do?
Maybe one or two in a million.
So that's the thing. So if there's only one or two people, let's say per month, that are looking for a cat therapist, and it's a really competitive space, the chances are it's not worth it for you to, go through the whole SEO process. Now, if you are a landscaper and you are, each job to you is worth 50 grand, then yeah, might be a good idea. But that's really typically the process is, first we look at your website, see what's going on with it. We look at your competitors. How powerful are they? What are our opportunities based off of that? And then keyword research, what is the potential growth that we can deliver you based on the numbers?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what are the bigger challenges for you with clients? Like, let's just say I was somebody and I was interested. What challenge you sometimes or often come up with that I would want to get my act together with first before coming to see you?
Don't really worry about getting your act together. I just start the conversation as quickly as possible, and we can create that strategy together. As far as the challenges that I've faced, it's really all about the trust. Depending on if you've done SEO before or who you've worked with before, there's a lot of just shady, just companies out there that really don't know what they're doing, and they sell SEO because it's a buzzword. It's something that business owners know that they need, and they just don't do anything. Mm-hmm. So that has to be my biggest challenge, is trying to get those people, especially when you meet a business owner that, I've worked with somebody in your space before. We've done really great. They just can't get over the scars of their previous SEO engagement. So it's really difficult to kind of convert them back into it. But that's probably the biggest challenge that I've run into, and it's really sad sometimes, just because, if you said yes to this right now, and if I could fast forward this to a year and a half, where we can take you, if you could just see that, I just wish I had a time machine to show you that. But
you can paint the picture for them.
Yeah, but sometimes those scars are deep.
Yeah. I'm sure it varies from situation or client to client, but how long does it really take to start to get some traction once you've really kind of pulled the trigger on it?
So it really depends on, again, the space, but typically around 3 to 6 months for an initial big push. Mm-hmm. Although there are certain cases where if we take on a website that has really, no on-page optimization, no keywords that are on the website in any of the important places, sometimes you'll see that once we do the on-page optimization and get all those keywords in all the right places on their website, they see that initial bump, a week, 2 weeks in. Sometimes that happens. And then if you're working in a non-competitive space, let's say we are working with, a chiropractor in a town where there's 30,000 people, sometimes that on-page optimization is actually enough to get you to the top. So it really just depends on the case. But since we are in San Diego County, typically 3 to 6 months for that initial push. And depending, if you're an attorney, the chances are we're going to have to work together forever. If you're a contractor, depending on the type of contractor you are, 9 months, a year. And then, so those are some good baselines.
Uh-huh. And a lot of this requires content development, right? You guys do that too?
We do help generate content. Really what we like to do is work with content creators, and as all these blogs and videos are coming in, we really just like to have our hands in there and make sure that the blog content or the video, as it's uploaded to YouTube, is optimized for SEO. But as far as coming up with content, we don't really do that in-house. We like to have, I come from a technical background. I'm not really very creative, I'll say. So that's very, very hard work for me. So I'd rather have somebody that, that's what they love to do, is write stories and write information and
so you bring them in,
things like that. Yep. And we'll make that happen.
Okay, good. So I'm going to ask a question, going to be a bit of a stretch, or maybe not. So could you equate with a metaphor that SEO is like Jiu-Jitsu?
Yes.
Okay, just give me one.
So again, I'm going to equate this to if you are in a larger city where there's a lot of competition, right? So in Jiu-Jitsu, if you work at it and work at it and work at it for, let's say, 5 years, you are going to get up to a certain level of being able to handle yourself, being able to, perform techniques at a certain speed. And then let's say all of a sudden you just stop. And then for the next 5 years, you just sat on your couch, did nothing. If you try to do jiu-jitsu again, you're likely going to struggle a lot. And that's really the same thing with SEO, especially if you're in a competitive city. You got to work at it, and there's a lot of work that goes into it. And all of a sudden, if you just stop all of a sudden, number one, your competitors are going to catch up and then overtake you. So really, that's a big parallel that we can draw on that. And then another one that we can take on is the fact that both are very technical practices. In jiu-jitsu, there are specific ways that you need to move your body. And if you do that move wrong, the body pressure that you have on your opponent is wrong, and they can sweep you, submit you, do a reversal escape. So those moves need to be performed precisely in the right way, in the right time. And with SEO, as you're ranking a website, especially if it's new, you got to be very, very careful and very deliberate on what you're doing, how you're doing it, how quickly you're doing it. So they're just both very technical art forms.
Art forms.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
It is an art,
Yeah. Some clients I know complain about what things cost. But, it's just the one way I think about it is like, okay, so do you have a store? Do you pay rent? No. Well, this is kind of, in a sense, like paying rent. Everything's moving online. So, people still, I think, like to go shopping. But there's a lot of people that have their businesses solely online. And so, you can expect to have a budget for services that equate to rent that you normally, would be paying for if you had a brick and mortar. Would you agree with that? Or?
Yeah, definitely. I will say I'm one of those people that I really don't like shopping. I really don't. My wife does all my shopping. So one of the things that you'll notice if you ever see me out and about is I will either be wearing a black polo and jeans, and I have like 10 or 15 of those black polos that I can just throw on.
Yeah.
If it's not that, I'll either have something blue on, and I'm wearing a blue shirt right now. And that's because my wife loves blue. So as we've started, like as we were dating and now we're married and she's doing my shopping, my wardrobe is slowly turning blue. Now, as far as that idea of rent, so that's actually a really good way that I've shifted my thinking with what I do with SEO, right? One of the things that we talked about earlier is digital real estate, because that's really all it is, right? Is, we are taking websites to the most trafficked places, on the planet. And if your website is on a traffic place where there's a lot of eyeballs that can get in front of it, you have a chance of making money. And really, the traffic from Google is just the best traffic, right?
Why do you say that?
Because if I have a busted toilet and I need a plumber and I search on Google for a plumber, I need a plumber, right?
And you're going to find one.
Yeah, I'm going to find one. I'm going to work with somebody over there. Like, if I am getting submitted in jiu-jitsu and somebody just, tweaks my back, I need a chiropractor. I need a chiropractor, right? I'm going to go on Google. I'm already in need. So at the very least, you get warm traffic in Google. And, in some cases, like a tree falls on someone's house, like they need that tree removed and that roof replaced. So,
yeah. And you don't need to put, used to be, it's like I would search for something near me. And no longer do you have to do that.
Yep. Google is smart enough
if
to...
If your smartphone, if your phone or PC or whatever, if it's connected to the internet and you have location services turned on.
Yep, exactly.
And most people, and by default, they all are pretty much, unless you consciously go in and turn them off.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's just really powerful. It's, you don't have to try to sell somebody or try to change their mind. It's, their mind is already made up. I need this, right? Another one, if you are an e-commerce store owner, a really powerful thing to rank for is, X product versus Y product, right? Because if a person, if a person is already comparing two products, they're deep in the buying process. They're just trying to figure out which brand or which product am I going to buy. So, very, very powerful platform to advertise your business on, market your business from.
Yeah. So beyond what you're doing with SEO, do you have any other services that are available too?
Yeah. So we actually launched a Facebook advertising service, and between Google and Facebook, we can pretty much reach, who we need to reach for our clients. We're looking at working with or bringing on a videographer, and that's something that I think is just very important on anybody's marketing strategies. You got to have video. Right? The days of, having a giant wall of text on your website and having somebody read it, that's just really doesn't happen anymore. If I landed on a website and I can watch a 30-second video or read a wall of text, I'm watching that video.
Yeah.
So video is huge. And then if you embed a video on your website, if somebody clicks play on that video, it'll count as an engagement, and Google tracks those things. And, more visits, more engagement on your website, the higher you'll rank. YouTube itself is its own search engine, so you can rank for that. So that's something that's in the works.
Yeah, nice. Very nice.
And of course, we're doing this podcast.
Yeah, and the services are available. If you want to do a podcast, contact John. John, I hope Victorino would hook them up with me, John.
Oh,
Beefman.
Yeah. The two Johns working together.
So what do you think of the studio?
I like it. I like the, would you consider these tapestries?
Well, they're antique Indian blankets.
Okay.
Yeah. They're wool, so they're thick and they absorb sound. So it makes it really, really pretty quiet and sweet in here.
Yeah. I will say that this, all these little patterns are kind of giving me an overload. So when I work from home, I have nothing on my walls.
I got that from you.
Nothing.
Yeah, and you told me your phone is across the room. You take no distractions.
Yep, I throw it over there. Like I have a whiteboard that's within my eyesight and nothing else. Like
So this is overload for you because these blankets have they're beautiful.
Yeah, the patterns are beautiful
and they're colorful, but it's a lot of energy.
That's it. It's a lot of energy. But I like the studio. It's awesome, and I'm enjoying doing the podcast.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you can come back.
Yeah.
If you have if you have something in your life that is just like even just a little small piece, you could run by after one of your other meetings, you're going to continue to be Thursdays for BNI.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if there's something you want to talk about, let me know. How do you want to end this? Do you have anything else you want to talk about? Anything you want to say?
I really came into this without much that I wanted to do. I just wanted to try the podcast, really, the whole podcasting game. So
yeah,
that's a mission accomplished for me. We got to talk about one of my loves, jiu-jitsu. My other love, my business. And I even squeezed in a couple of conversations about my wife in there. So
nice.
I'm 3 for 3. But other than that, man, it's been fun.
Yeah, good. So get in contact with to you at beaconseo.com.
Yep, you can find my company's website at beaconseo.com. Should I give a phone number too?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, you can, sure, if you want.
I actually don't remember my office number, but beaconseo.com and my office number will be on there. Oh, and if you're a business owner and you are curious about how your website is doing, you can actually go on my website and there's a big button at the top that says get a free SEO report.
Uh-huh.
You just type in your website and your email and it'll automatically, run through your website and then go through some optimizations that you can do on your own and then go through that list, So if you're ever interested, run that report.
Well, that's exactly what I'm going to do after I get off this podcast with you.
There you go.
I'm going to run johnbeathan.com through it.
Yeah. And if you want somebody to go through that report that you would get with you.
To explain it a little more detail?
Yeah. Feel free to reach out. I'm usually very generous in my information. That's the thing too, is that, one of the things that we talked about earlier is we're doing a Tech Bites that's about SEO for the Carlsbad Chamber.
Mm-hmm.
The way that I do my presentations is I hold nothing back. Like I will give you all the free resources, all the free information that you want. If you want to do it yourself, go ahead. But, if you're a busy business owner, do you really want to be optimizing your website? Do you want to be running your business? So come on down, do your report, and we'll run through it.
All right. John, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, and we will talk to everybody next time.